In the prior episode, I called it episode 2, but it's actually 2A because this one, I left the video incomplete. And it's just like me. What do I know? I'm groping here. So I didn't talk about frequency of the capacitor and what it does. It oscillates, doesn't it? But why does it oscillate? It oscillates, it sets up an oscillation, or it wants to under the right circumstances. You know, this capacitor here and this capacitor here. Because it's given the opportunity to do so. And so the value of the capacitor has to coincide with that opportunity. Now, in the case of this spark gap, we want it to fire, and that means we need a certain voltage minimum to break down the gap, the resistance across the gap, so that it can fire. And when it does fire, it has to fire with sufficient voltage to be of any use to break down that so-called breakdown voltage barrier reef that disallows the spark gap to fire in the first place, because that's what it is. It's a dialectical separation between 2 points that prevents it from running all the time. Unless, of course, you know, our voltage in this vicinity is so high that the spark gap, it's like the spark gap's not even there. It becomes a neon bulb of sorts, which is what, you know, some spark gaps are. They're neon bulbs. But in this case, in this circuit, it doesn't function, it doesn't function that way. It's not on all the time. It's only on for a moment. So that's why the value of this capacitor is so high at 1 millifarad by comparison to this one, because we want the frequency of oscillation of charge and discharge for this capacitor to be very slow, infrequent. We want a lot of time, lag time between charge and discharge. We want a lot of time for this capacitor to charge up. And we want a lot of voltage for it to discharge to create a nice clean arc across the spark gap, so that we have nice cycles of rest and activity, you know, firing and not firing of the spark gap. So we have a slow frequency here associated with this spark gap, and a large firing and a large voltage when it does fire. And then over here we have the opposite. We have a high frequency, a very teeny-weeny voltage to get this to fire frequently, or get this to oscillate, frequently, charge and discharge. Oscillates charge and discharge cycles frequently. Why, I don't know. But I'm reading it. This is the way I'm reading it. I have to interpret this like, interpreting a musical composition on a printed page. What is it doing? What's happening here? Say if I'm the conductor of this orchestra, which I am. I designed it, but I don't know what I did. I want to understand what I did. So that's the purpose of frequency in a capacitor. So that means that this capacitor is behaving the same way as this one is, only slower and with more force, while this one does it more frequently with less force, by a factor of 9 zeros to the right of the decimal point, namely a ratio proportion between them of let's see, 1,000, million, billion. 1 billion to 1. Because that's the difference between them, is 1 billion to 1, which is a nano to 1. But we don't say nano to 1, we say 1 billion to 1. Or 1e to the negative 9 to 1, because that's the difference between negative 3 and negative 12, is negative 9. Now, I did mention or allude to briefly in a prior episode of this series that I didn't have to have these values. But of course I wasn't converting anything. I had useless free money accumulating, and I couldn't spend it. And I didn't care because I was focusing on other aspects of the circuit, its development in other ways. Just the build-up alone was sufficient for my attention span. And so I will speculate that the reason why I got away with other values for these capacitors, or various values for this one adjacent to this, in parallel with the spark gap, is because the circuit wasn't finished. It was incomplete. And so consequently, it didn't matter what value I had to the capacitor too much. So it shows that when a concept is incomplete, it's not clear what the role is for every component. You know, it's like if you've seen the movie Shakespeare in Love, the person playing Shakespeare is writing the piece Romeo and Juliet, and he hasn't finished it yet, and he even changes the title, you know, and he doesn't know what he's doing, seemingly. Yet some kind of unseen hand is guiding the development, because his intellect knows. It doesn't know what it wants, but it knows what it does not want. And that's the only thing the character in that movie knows while he's writing the script ad hoc, while they're playing it, while the actors are practicing their roles. He still hasn't finished it. And I think that's the way I've gone about development of this circuit. Is I really didn't know what I was doing. I just knew what I did not want. And I didn't know all the things I did not want. See, I needed critics. I needed critics to review my movie, my play. So now we've got a play here. Before we had a monetary system, a micro-cryptocurrency monetary system, and now we've got a play. And the scriptwriter didn't know what he was doing, and he went out for criticisms at various places like Stack Exchange, and because he needed reviewers, actually, to critique him, to tell him what was wrong, what was missing. Now, I didn't know that. I thought I needed an understanding of what was not what was missing, but what was there, so that I could understand what was happening, so I could understand, well, why does it work at all? Why do I get free energy? And I still don't know why exactly. But instead, with the real important thing, in addition to that, not instead, but in addition to it, I needed critiques to get me to finish the darn thing. I didn't know that. But see, I was ignorant. And so I needed the criticism, and I was too ignorant to ask for the criticism, so instead I was asking for help and understanding, well, why am I getting all this free energy? And I got that question answered very quickly. Oh, it's just, reactive power, big deal. Woohoo. But I thought it was a big deal. It's like, woohoo, because I had no formal training, so to me it's a big deal. So they're brainwashed to think it's useless, so it's no big deal, and they're accustomed to seeing it all the time. And I'm not accustomed to seeing it necessarily, or think that it's that easy. So, and I don't think it's useless. So I get all excited. And they were trying to tone me down and said, no, don't get excited. It's nothing. It's useless. What's it good for? And even if you found a way to make it useful, it wouldn't be worth the trouble. It wouldn't be worth the bother. You're getting excited over nothing. As another Shakespeare famous line would say, it's an actor playing a role, but boasting his importance when he speaks of nothing but thin air. Yeah, it's something like that. I can't remember the exact set of lines. Amounting to nothing. That's the last, I think, the ultimate expression that Shakespeare says. Amounting to nothing. And, if that doesn't make you depressed, I don't know what will. If you took that seriously, like, I'm hopeless. I'm wasting my time. Forget the fact that nobody pays attention, right? For the most part, society won't pay attention to what I'm saying here. But to be told that it's useless. But of course, so this is why I call Tesla an artist and an inventor, but not a scientist. Because if he's a scientist, he would have shared his secrets, but he did not. He kept them all to himself. No, he was an artiste. Creating works of art. He's like a Michelangelo, or what's the other one besides Michelangelo? Da Vinci, He's there among them, and that's why we revere him so much, because he's not a scientist, he's an artiste. He invented a work of electrical art. Aha. We don't have a Louvre for those kinds of things, an electrical Louvre, but we should. Or a section of the Smithsonian devoted to electrical art, and call it that. And here's the artist's signature there by the side of his painting. Yeah, but well, on his patent, right? He signed it. So there, see? So you got to see these things for what they are. I don't sign my work. I should. I used to. Oh, God. You got to laugh. It certainly is ridiculous how we go about this. Back ass in fashion, as like we get into our car, our ass precedes us and the rest of us follows. Some people go the other way. Their head goes first and their ass follows. I think they have they're spooked. They can't do it any other way. Oh, God. So, that's why these capacitors... So, I am creating another type of dipole, a dipole of frequency in which this section oscillates frequently, while this section oscillates very infrequently. And it could very well be that I lowered this to 1 picofarad to match the frequency that I'm inputting here. It could very well be the case. But I know my staccato wedges are much slower than either of these two frequency encouragements. This one forcefully, brute force, and this one, I'll just react with my capacitive reactance. While this one says, no, I got to go slowly because I want the staccato wedges to happen infrequently. For some reason, I don't know why. Probably having to do with certain values, like the values of 1 Henry on the voltage component, voltage coils, or the 10 Henries on this transformer. I don't know. I don't know why it has to be infrequently. Maybe it's the value of this. It's something that's going to be dictating why this has to have such a high value of capacitance here to oscillate very infrequently. So what it means is the rest of the circuit is not building up a whole lot of voltage. And very fast. Because if it were, this would have to be made to oscillate, to be tuned to oscillate more frequently rather than less frequently. So tuning this thing is like tuning a violin with 100 strings on it, and they all have to be tuned with little chords between them. And not all of them the same chords. 5th chords, 3rd chords, 7th chords, 9th chords, 127,001 chord, whatever that comes to. If you know anything about music, I just threw some chords out at you. A tritone chord. Oh no, not that. I used to fool around with those. Those are very interesting. Make a scale out of a tritone chord. The scale alone is based on the tritone chord. Yeah, very interesting scale. So this is getting to sound like it's kind of interesting because now I'm starting to understand it the way an electrical engineer would understand it. Because I forgot, capacitors ring. That's what they are. They're a bell. They ring. You strike them and they ring. So, sorry, I'm rubbing my nose here. I hit the microphone with my hand. But in a monetary... So now I've switched to music, right? I went from electricity to a monetary system to a one-act play by Shakespeare, Shakespeare's nephew. Wait, did he have a nephew? Yeah, his name was Pete Saville. No, it was Arthur Matthews. Oh, and it wasn't his nephew, it was his, anyway, neighborhood friend. Oh, God, this is too much. And I went to a musical composition. Yeah, it could be any of the above, So, a capacitor is a bell that rings. Well, that helps. Sorry, I had a yawn. Yes, we must look for as many analogies as possible. At this point, I'll take anything and grab it. At some point, we want full understanding about the behavior of this thing. Like, why does the current turn into noise coming in at this input sine wave generator? At one point in my development of this, I actually was able to achieve a sine wave of current coming in from the sine wave generator. But now it went back to being noise again. So it has been noise, current noise, and voltage sine wave throughout most of the development of this circuit. Why is that, you know? What's the significance of that analysis, or that observation, I should say? What is the analysis of that observation? I don't know. That is a very good question. I don't know. But if I had to take a guess, this tube representing the separation of this transfer coil, the separation of coupling coefficient, makes it look like the acoustic chamber of a violin or a guitar or a flute, better yet. This is getting to look very interesting series of videos. It's not the way it started out. It wasn't the intention to get into music theory, how to construct a musical instrument that you put in a teeny weeny little tone. Let's say this sine wave generator is a string, and we pluck it at 20,000 cycles per second. It's tuned to, and its amplitude is 3 volts amplitude. And yet, as it's vibrating, the current it sends out is random. It's noise. Yet its voltage amplitude is not. Now, what does that mean? That means it's a complex wave. It's not vibrating nicely. But, no, what it means is we are the voltage. We pluck it once every 20,000th of a second. 20,000th, right, of a second. We pluck it in such a way as we pull the string, like pulling the string on a bow to release an arrow. If we're going to shoot an arrow, shoot it forth like Arjuna. We're the master bowman. We're going Arjuna. Oh, Arjuna, what do you see? Oh, Sanjaya, what do you see? Okay, enough. We don't want to get off into the Bhagavad Gita. I could tell you, maybe this whole thing is just the Bhagavad Gita. It's the missing lines that were taken away by the angels of heaven immediately after they were written down, leaving us only 700 lines or whatever they were. Hey, that's interesting. Now that I think of it, Charlie Lutz said there were 777 incarnations limited to the soul. So the 700 lines of the Bhagavad Gita, if I remember that saying correctly, that's the 700 lifetimes of a human in pure pursuit of survival, which, considering the fact that the Bhagavad Gita was written at the close of the Treta Yuga, at the start of, towards the beginning of the Kali Yuga, that's the nature of the Kali Yuga. All we're intent on is survival. First chakra, Muladhara chakra, 4 states of consciousness: waking, dreaming, and sleeping, and transcending on rare occasion. Just enough to spike things and keep things going with a little spike of divinity, a moment's pause of the transcendent, of the transcendental immortal now, eternal now, to keep things moving along, refresh things only on rare occasion, because most of the time all we want to do is wake, sleep, and dream. We don't want to spend much time doing much else. That's survival. That's what the 4 chakra petals, the 3 sibilants, the 2 SHs and the S and the V phonemes are in the Muladhara chakra at the base of the spine. That's all they are. All they care about are those 4 momentary states of consciousness, none of which are long-lasting. And so nothing about the Kali Yuga is intended to last long, and it's no small wonder that we say, nothing lasts, Everything changes. Well, that's the nature of the Kali Yuga, because life is short, and so everything is sped up, like a little mouse breathes more rapidly than a big elephant, or its heartbeat for that matter. And that's the nature of our lifespan. Our heart beats faster, we breathe more quickly, and so our lifespan is shorter. It's only 100 years if we're lucky, on average, if we're lucky. In the days of Rome, they were lucky if they lived to be 25. So, you were an old man if you were 40. So it has, so now we're bringing in the yugas, because that's where the Bhagavad Gita sits, between two yugas. And that's why it's there, and that's why it has 700 verses, because all we're intent on is pure survival. The physical world, or our focus on physicality alone, instead of it putting our attention on other layers of reality, or even the transcendental layer for that matter, is enlightenment is the last interest that anybody motivated in the Kali Yuga has. It's because the nature of the age dictates that we should just focus on our material existence, and we should become materialists. That's why we call it physics, because we're only interested in our physical reality. It sits well. It's the nature of the Kali Yuga, the fourth yuga, the shortest yuga of them all, 400 some odd thousand years long in duration before it finally everything gets annihilated and everybody along with it. The earth is swept clean to initiate the next am I using the right word? Chatur Yuga, the next round of 4 yugas. Starting, with Sat Yuga, and then followed by Dvapara and Treta, and then Kali. But the Sat, my God, 100,000 year lifespan average for the humans living in that world. You have to wonder, are they physical? For those 2 yugas, the Sat and the Dvapara. The Treta, okay, 1,000 years, Methuselah, I can imagine that, a physical body, but lasting 1,000 years. But how do you maintain a physical body for 10,000 years, let alone 100,000 years, where life is so blissful and sweet? What do you do about the germs? See, do the germs disappear when the Kali Yuga ends and the Sat Yuga begins following it? So you have to wonder. I've always wondered about that. And if you read Carlos Castaneda, he kind of gives a hint, hello, that quite possibly nobody's physical in those two yugas, because you do live longer if you're not physical. You waste less energy, for one thing, and you have less hazards on the subtle planes. All the hazards are out here in the physical world. So it kind of makes you wonder, but it goes with why I question, the nature of the Kali Yuga must be pure physicality. That must be why life is hell, because we're out here in the physical and we're oblivious to anything more subtle. Anyway, with that little interlude, that little commercial interruption, station identification, public service announcement, there we go. With that little interruption of a public service announcement regarding yugas and spirituality versus materialism, why are things the way they are? I really haven't contributed a whole lot during that little interlude as to my understanding of the circuit, but it sure was a nice little trespass upon your patience. Wasn't it? Don't you think? Yeah, I got to do something for amusement here, because nothing is coming to me except other stuff. Oh yes, I was plucking the string with an amplitude of 3 volts. So now it's not a troy ounce of 3 troy ounces of silver. Now it's an amplitude of 3 volts that I pluck my string, my sine wave generator string, once every 20,000th of a second to maintain this thing. Because if you stop doing that, the whole thing dies. So you do need this. You need an input. This is not a perpetual motion machine. You need that plucking going on. So you got a musician here plucking the string, putting new money into circulation every 1/20th of a second, 1/20,000th, of a second. And he does it with a certain amplitude. So he's putting in a certain amount of cash into circulation. 3 volts, amounting to 3 volts, 3 troy ounces of silver. But is he, though? He's plucking the string, but that's not what comes out of his instrument. What comes out is noise. And they're really teensy-weensy little, the amplitude on the current sine waves coming out of this, if you take a look at it, is really teensy. So he's not putting 3 amps, certainly, into the circulation, and it's not regular. They're at random in terms of transactions, in terms of the actual cash flow. So it must mean that his printing press does one thing, and what comes out the other end is something else entirely in terms of timing and in terms of quantity of greenbacks. You know, if we're now converting into greenbacks. Or it's a minting. Forget the string and the string representing a printing press. It's a silver mint. And instead of putting out ounces of silver on a regular basis, which is, it's stamping the silver on a regular basis, 3 troy ounces is what it's trying to do, 20,000 times a second. It's stamping the proofs, minting. It's minting each proof of silver. Yet that's not what happens. That's what it's trying to do. Oh, so that would be the pressure applied. While the actual movement of the printing press is something else entirely. That's the noise. The actual movement of the printing press. It's random. So something is resisting it. Yeah, the circuit is resisting. Reactance is resisting it. Aha, now we're getting somewhere. So the reason why the current coming out of the sine wave generator is noise is because of the reactance here is so powerful and so potent. Hey, duh, the voltage is so high. It's a lot more than 3 volts. It's thousands. It's up to 1,000,000 volts. You know? How come I'm not seeing? Whoops, because I don't have a focus. Where is it? Whoops, wrong way. Hey, how come I'm in the wrong... Oh, because this... Not getting what I want to get. Oh, because I'm scrolling through my desktop. I'm not scrolling through where I got this image from. Interesting. These arrows don't work where the image is located. They work where the shortcut of the image is located. Interesting twist there to this piece of software. Anywho, I was going to show you something else, another image, but in any case, I'll just describe it to you. Just I don't want to take the trouble to look for it. Where was I before I get distracted? Well, if you really want to know, this is an expression out of the Bhagavad Gita, okay? There. Now, see, it's on my mind. It's right next door. So the reactance of the voltage reactance is so high that it's pressuring the sine wave generator with resistance, and that's why it has to put out noise, because of the complex of reactive resistances of reactive voltages that are imposing themselves onto the sine wave generator, creating a net result of a current coming out of the sine wave generator, which is randomized, which is teeny weeny by contrast to what's being thrust in its face. It's if I could hazard a guess, I would guess that the current that should be coming out of the sine wave generator, if we were simply feeding a flashlight circuit situation with like 0 resistance to the flashlight bulb and the switch of the flashlight, is that this is offering resistance, competing against the flow of current. That's why the current is less than 100 nanowatts. In addition, that resistance varies because it's so complicated, causing this current to come out in a randomized, noisy fashion rather than a nice, clean, crisp sine wave of current coming out of it. So see, that little diversion into Bhagavad Gita land was actually useful. It helped me think. How about that? Thank you, Krishna. Thank you, Veda Vyasa, because that's where my name Vinyasi comes from, in case you want to know, and then I'll sign off here. Vinyasi, if you subdivide it into its 4 components, Asi is the second person singular of Vinyasa. Vinyasa yoga. It's all over the internet. When I got my name, when I realized my name 20 years ago, Vinyasa yoga was not on the internet. It was a beetle. Vinyasa is the genus name for a beetle, taxonomy, genus, for a beetle, not the Beatles and not genius, but the taxonomous name for a type of beetle. And it was also a person who died in either Portugal or Portuguese Brazil. I forget which. He was Portuguese. It's a Portuguese name of a person, a personal pronoun of a person who had died recently, I think back in the 60s. Recently, by my standards. And that was it. And now it's all over the internet. If you look my name on the internet, the first thing you get is, Vinyasa Yoga. So Vinyasa is the first person singular of Vinyasi, because in actuality there are two ahs that are smushed together, giving it a double duration. Vinyasi or Vinyasa. It's a double duration there, because the asi or the asa or the ati, if it's third person singular, they, them, those, that is still ah, and so we still get a double duration ah because the two ahs are smushed together. So that's what the asi portion. Now the other part of the name splits into three root verbs, viniya, and Sanskrit dictates that if a y, a consonant, follows after a vowel of e, that the e disappears. And that's why you get the tilde n, the California n, the rolling off your tongue, nya, vinyasa, vinyasi. But if you take out that middle root verb, ni, and put everything back together again, you get vyasi. And turn it into first person singular, you get Vyasa. And so what I think Vinyasi means is, I'm a pointer. In Judaism, the yod is a silver arm, very long, because you're not supposed to touch the Torah when you're reading from it, the scroll of the Torah. The Torah, the Talmud, or not the Talmud, the Bible, the Old Testament. For those of us who are non-Gentile illiterate. Boy, those talk about making use of double negatives. Non-Gentile illiterate. Two double negatives. You can't touch the Torah when you're reading from it, when you're doing bar mitzvah or bat mitzvah. So you have the cantor holding the yod to point, and it's got a teeny weeny little silver hand on a very long silver arm. It's really weird. Somebody pulled on the arm and stretched it and squeezed on the hand so much that it's teeny weeny by comparison to the girth of the arm itself, the forearm, I should say, the very long forearm. So I'm the pointer who points to Vyasa, Veda Vyasa. And I'm saying, he's the man. He's the dude you have to listen to. Because the guy said, he claimed, he was going to keep himself alive throughout the entire Kali Yuga, to be there, standing over the shoulder of any commentator of the Vedas, to make sure the commentator gets it right. So maybe I'm just a commentator. Maybe that's what Vinyasi means. I'm one of the various commentators authorized by Veda Vyasa. Because if I get anything wrong, he's going to slap me around a bit. Or let Mother Nature do the slap for him on his behalf. And Mother Nature's darn good at it. To make sure I wake up, he'll have her pull on my ears, like, ow, and say, wait, what am I doing wrong? And did I say something wrong? Did I leave something out? And to make sure I get it right, that I have everything included in here so that you understand what it is he's trying to reach you with, so that I'm speaking on his behalf. That's the purpose of Vinyasi, is to point out the fact that nothing I do has any relevance to me at all. Because I don't want to swear, and I don't want to make a bet I couldn't pay. But let me tell you, in past experience, it has been that if I finish a topic of study, because that's all I do. I'm like a scholar. I just go around and I study topics for a certain length of time until I get bored with it, because I get too good at it for my own good, and I move on to another topic. And that's all I've done my whole life, this lifetime. So it could be, and then when I go back to that and I read what I've written, if I wrote it down, what I had learned, I don't understand a word I said. I go, wow, that guy's smart. Wait, that was me? So I'm just a channel for my muse, and now I know who my muse is. It's Vyasa, and I'm Vinyasi, his scribe, relaying to you what he wants you to know on a particular topic. But ultimately, I have to give him all the credit because he must be. It's in my name. I didn't make up this name. I fasted, and before I broke the fast, I came to the realization of what my Sanskrit name is. In Jewish tradition, you're not supposed to tell anybody your phonic name, because somebody might put a hex on that name and hence on you. Well, all they have to do is hate you, and that's a hex already. But I want it. I want it to reach me. I don't want to hide from my karma. If you hate what the teacher is teaching you, I want to know. So that's why I changed my name legally, went into court and did it legal, instead of just waiting around. But I took 2 years to get used to the sound and getting used to writing my name that way, because I thought, that's so audacious. It's so proudful and boastful. A name having any association to do with Veda Vyasa, my God, who are you? Who are you? Who do you think you are? But hey, I'm the nudist who goes and brags what I know about electrodynamics that I get from my soul, that I didn't have to go to get formal training from, because I've already studied this thing thousands upon thousands of years ago as a physicist. And who taught Tesla when he was a wee little winky soul student of mine. Long before he ever became a Tesla. So, it's like, whoo, talk about a braggart, Well, that's my role in the universe, is to be another little Ganesh. I'm a little Ganesh of a scribe whose name is Vinyasi, but whose function is a Ganesh, who imparts to you what Veda Vyasa has to say, because that's what Ganesh does, right? He's a scribe. He's a Vinyasi. He's another Vinyasi. We call him Ganesh, but that's his function, Hey, Mr. Mayor, well, we could say Mr. Mayor. Oh, Mr. El Presidente. We could say El Presidente, Señor Presidente. We could say Señor Presidente, but we don't. We say, President Trump, Presidente Trump. So we Presidente is his functional name, but Trump is his personal name. See? So when you think about it, that's a military-style name nomenclature, right? Last name first. Presidente is his function. So that would be his last name first. And his personal name is Trump, which is actually his family surname. We should be saying Presidente Donald, if we wanted to be actually correct about this. So what is my personal name? I don't know. So Vinyasi is actually just my functional name. I'll be darned. There's more to the mystery of what my name is. Aha. To be continued at some future date. Maybe when I die, I'll figure out what it is. See, you could never put a hex on me. You could only put a hex on my function. Aha. And so all the elephants, all the Ganeshas of the world will take on my karma along with me. If you hate me, you'll hate them. So you better watch it. A stampede of elephants may come your way in retribution. Unless, of course, I needed to be slapped around. Then they'll come by and squirt you with water and give you a nice shower. And brush you off. Brush the dust of the earth off your body. They may thank you. They may come by and thank you. The elephants in my life may come by, or the elephants in your life may come by and thank you. So I truly am then a reincarnation of Mowgli, and the elephants come to my rescue. Jungle Book. And now maybe that's the place to end this video. This circuit is Jungle Book, where the little nudist Vinyasi is running around just like Mowgli is in the Jungle Book by what's his face, Who was that author who wrote it? Kipling, Rudyard Kipling. Wherein the West is West and the East is East, and never the twain shall meet. Hogwash. They're meeting just fine. That's the British for you, saying they'll never shall meet. Oh, brother. Well, they had to create separation. Oh, look down their noses at the Indian population and... enough already. Okay. Now I really can't go back on topic just as well. It's time to stop talking. Well, good, we should have fun doing this. It shouldn't be all labor, It should be a love of labor. That's what knowledge should be. It should be a love of labor. A lovely labor. A labor of love.